Hello, everyone, and so glad to join you and have Damien as our first participant and friend, colleague on Medley Moments. You know, Medley Moments, as I've mentioned before, has been created because I really do believe that others' experiences can and should inform uh, ours. And I am so fortunate to travel in so many different circles. Damien is special in that regard. We've known each other for now decades, and our relationship has morphed over the years. First, I was perhaps the more senior person in a division at Goldman Sachs. He was an analyst and associate. And, you know, let's just say there were a few things perhaps that I helped Damien with along. But there were many things then and now that Damien has always helped me with. One, his rigor, his thirst for learning, his eagerness to help others around him and to make everyone better. You know how it goes. At some point, roles reverse. I remember I was taking on a new job at Goldman Sachs, and it was in the loan space, something that I didn't really know much about. Saturday morning, super early, Damien arrived with his 6-month-old son and sat at my kitchen table and taught me the basics of the loan business while my husband, Robert, tried to figure out how to keep the baby occupied. So we have quite a journey. And I am so thrilled to share Damien's perspectives on so many things with all of you. So let's start with the resume. The resume is extraordinary. Went to Georgetown, started his career as I saw it, at Goldman Sachs, although he really started at Salomon Brothers. Got all sorts of accolades, ended up leaving for Credit Suisse, took the first risk, I would say. And the risk was seeing that there was an opportunity in the credit space that he knew so well to branch off and create and co-found Brightwood, which was his first risk and his first reward, I would say. There he learned the importance of the rigor of bringing people along in his journey, investing in training and development people, and to always keep an eye out for opportunities to grow and broaden his impact. From there, he created Lafayette Square, and we're going to spend some time talking about that. At the same time, Damien has never, ever forgotten the significance of giving and philanthropy. So he currently serves on the board of Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Studio Museum in Harlem, Natural Trust for Historic Preservation, Boys Club of New York, Vera Institute of Justice, and is a council member with me on the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. So perhaps the first question should be, where do you find the time, Damien? But instead, let's just talk about your journey as you'd like it to be told.
Edith Cooper, thank you for investing in me and countless professionals. I'm giving you your flowers while I can look at you and on a big stage. Love you dearly. I'm so grateful for your sacrifice of time and treasure to make other people bigger and to give hope and to give context. Thank you for what you're doing and how you walk the walk. We lost Dick Parsons recently.
Yes.
You were a protege, of course, of the late Vernon Jordan. And when I think about these greats, you are carrying that weight and showing up for our community and for society in ways that are so tremendous. So I just have to praise you in public, what you did in each stage of your career as a professional, as a mother, as a spouse, as a friend. I also like to embarrass you. You know, you were codenamed Auntie back in the day at Goldman Sachs.
One more minute of this. 10 seconds, and then we're getting at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Lafayette Square is my passion. We are investors focused on bringing capital to working class people and places. The context in which we operate is private credit, which is topical today. You see no shortage of insurance companies, retail investors, institutions looking for current return sourced from investing in small, medium-sized business. As a narrative arc, what's really happening is a lot of money has been thrown at private equity controlled businesses. And there's been a gold rush to finance bigger and bigger companies to the point that for the largest publicly traded alternative investment firms, the conversation is now not about creating capital for small, medium-sized business. It's about investment grade investing from a private market perspective.
So these are, just for the broader audience's understanding, historically, the private equity businesses have been focused on larger companies, very, very large companies, correct?
Exactly. And it gets bigger and bigger with the passage of time. And so the first priority we have at Lafayette Square is to finance businesses owned and controlled by families, founders, entrepreneurs, people other than private equity. We also finance private equity. Of course, we do both, but there is a special emphasis on seeing that 60% of our portfolio go directly to privately held businesses that are small or medium in size, which I would define as less than $1 billion of revenue.
And why do small and medium-sized businesses matter? I mean, are they significant to our economy now? Have they always been? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you have about 150 million workers in the labor force in the United States. 50 million of those workers are in businesses with less than $1 billion of revenue. So this is the
A
backbone.
third.
A third of the U.S. economy is tied to these sub $1 billion revenue enterprises. There are about 240,000 companies with revenue of $10 million to $1 billion. That cohort is tens of millions of workers. So it's very significant to the tax base, to how families function. It's critical. But there's trouble, Edith. What you see is today the American worker lives check to check 60% of the time. Just pause and reflect on that. Out of 50 million workers, 2/3 are essentially living check to check. They don't have $400 for an emergency. So what's happening with turnover in these same businesses has gotten my attention at Lafayette Square and the attention of investors. What do we do in a society where you have 50% turnover in companies with revenue less than $1 billion? What do you do when 2/3 of Americans live check to check? What do you do when there's visible, measurable inflation and yawning of the wealth gap? So we're very focused on the positive, constructive role the middle market can play in reducing turnover and increasing healthcare and retirement benefit adoption by working class people in these businesses. There's a second point to make. There's a geographic rhyme or reason to how capitalism functions. So often we now see the vast majority of money flows to high income zip codes. So if a company is headquartered in a working class place, someplace other than Midtown Manhattan or Greenwich, Connecticut, their access to capital is less. And so, again, being positive, there's an investment opportunity there. There are phenomenal returns to be made if one focuses on working class people and working class places. And that, of course, leads you to doing things beyond just private equity. It also opens the door to something relevant to Medley, which is bringing services to the business. Capital alone doesn't get it done. You also have to bring services that will reduce turnover and increase healthcare and retirement. And being able to have access to better healthcare, progressive HR policies, working with young people and mid-level professionals to get not only job training, but also therapy as is necessary. These are things which actually improve cash flow for a business, improve the business performance, and justify access to better capital at lower cost. I'm really excited to be at the vanguard of that work because there is a business case for cracking the nut on turnover and increasing healthcare and retirement. And lo and behold, you can make really good returns lending to companies which over time have better performance because they're getting their arms around these issues.
So, it's super interesting how you've just described the underpinnings of the philosophy, the business philosophy, shall we say, of Lafayette Square. The Lafayette Square ambition is to serve working class people and make money for our shareholders. And so you are connecting the dots between investing in working class experiences, as you've described, whether it's healthcare, access to tools that advance one's education, learning and development opportunities as a way to increase returns. Now, I've been in the leadership executive space for some time, and often we end up in this, we do it because, I don't know, we kind of think it's the right thing to do. You're taking a different approach. You are developing tools and really investing in showing the returns. Talk about that for us in a bit more detail.
Yeah, look, I would say this is not novel. This has been laid before us for decades. We named the business Lafayette Square on purpose. We're focused on running toward DC, running toward regulation.
Are you still focused on running towards DC, Damien?
In all scenarios, we have to maintain our franchise and be a positive actor in Washington, in both the executive branch and the legislative branch. It is non-negotiable that we participate and negotiate and advance causes. And turns out Republican and Democratic administrations and prior Congresses have been very consistent in wanting to see the private sector bring capital and services to working class people in working class places. This is the premise behind the SBA and how it was created in the 50s after the Korean War.
Administration.
The Small Business Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce. I can go on. There's business to be done in D.C., and it's not to be ignored. I mean, just to give a quick example, the annual spending budget at the Department of Defense is $850 billion per year. Their need to interact with more than just big business to get that done is palpable. So small business has a franchise in this economy of ours, which is inherently influenced, if not dominated, by government. We spoke earlier about there being 150 million workers in the workforce, 50 million in the small, medium-sized business category. Well, guess what? There are about 50 million workers in federal, state, local government, right? So government is critical to this government spending, government's agenda, the policy agenda. It impacts the business environment. And so we are very focused on aligning with public policy that has been codified and promoted for decades, but Wall Street hasn't always paid attention and done its part. There is real interest in seeing capital flow to companies headquartered in working class places or companies that employ working class people. And that is a bipartisan item. Everybody wants to see rural America see more opportunity. Everybody wants to see smaller businesses get a fair shake. And we have countless examples of small businesses that not only produce a lot of cash flow and contribute to the tax base through what they pay their workers, but Edith, this is the fabric of the society. You know, everyone can't work at a Fortune 500 company, nor should they. We are a nation of laws, but we're also a nation of entrepreneurship. And seeing ways to promote vitality in that space requires money. But money's not enough. I think you have three parts to the formula. You have to have low cost, long duration capital available to these companies. You got to bring services that actually touch workers at the payroll level. I'm talking about better healthcare, better retirement. And this can be built into the business model, including the access to capital. And the third piece is you need great technology. so that you can track and measure all of the above and focus the resources appropriately. We're proving that if you do a good job here, you actually can get a lower interest rate. We have at my shop a couple $100 million out of Europe. The interest rate on that borrowing fluctuates based on hitting our 2030 goals. We've committed to create 100,000 working class jobs, invest 50% of our capital in working class places, and see half of our companies adopt services. If those three things happen on track toward 2030, our interest rate goes down. We're able to pass that lower interest rate on to our borrowers, and we encourage our borrowers to think about adopting services like Medley to reduce the turnover. If they adopt the great services, then we're happy to take their interest rate down 5 or 10 basis points. So this thing becomes virtuous, but again, it's predicated upon having money, having services, and having great technology in order to pull it all together.
And why is technology important? It gets you the information that you need, as an example. What are the other things?
Well, in the spirit of continuous learning and innovation, I don't understand how one could operate in today's society without having robust technology. And the things we're trying to do don't lend themselves to being outsourced. Um, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I've had to take risk and expose myself to things where I didn't have domain expertise, but I had a vision. And I knew if I brought in the right talent, we can link arms and march in that direction. That has precisely been my experience with technology. I knew how to invest. I knew how to attract talent to help with services. I knew nothing about coding and developing software and user interface and all that. We have 10 people who do that for us full time. The leader of that group is on the executive committee with me. But it's about clarity. If there's nothing else that we talk about today, Edith, imparting on the audience the power and the leverage of having a singular, clear goal, in my case, that is tied to a date as a unifying feature is so important. Because I'm clear about creating 100,000 working class jobs, investing 50% in working class places, and seeing half the companies adopt services, it became logical, inevitable, unavoidable that I would have to build out robust tech, and I'd have to take chances partnering with people who did that well and bringing them to the table to actually impact and influence my leadership.
So there are several things that I want to really emphasize in what you've described, because I think they have all really contributed to your impact, and your capacity to take on risks that you believe are real opportunities. One, it's a never-ending recognition that there's something to learn, and that you're willing to do the work to either learn it or to surround yourself with extraordinary people who have the expertise you don't. So that's the second thing. That really does suggest that you are willing to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I know what I don't know, and I'm going to figure out who I can get access to or bring in my organization that will give me real leverage. And then the third thing really is, accountability, personal accountability, to deliver into your objectives, and the responsibility that you hold as a leader to articulate clearly what the ultimate goal is, the appropriate time frame, so that not only you're holding yourself accountable, but you can really hold the organization accountable to deliver into, for your shareholders, for your team, and for the communities that you're suggesting you're going to impact. What have I missed with respect to your leadership philosophy? And specifically, can you give us an example of where things haven't gone particularly well, that has also fueled your philosophy on impact?
Sure. So I say to the team every time we convene as a group, and that's 3 times a week we come together as a firm, surface mistakes. I underwrite and anticipate that things will go bump in the night and that we will make errors and omissions and mistakes will happen. the key is to never hide the mistake. So that's number one. Number two, keep the main thing the main thing.
I love that. Keep the main thing the main thing.
Now, when you unpack that second point, it presupposes leadership has been clear, consistent, and on record about defining the main thing. So there is no misunderstanding or confusion about people's assignments, why they matter, and how everyone is having checks and balances and ensuring that we are keeping the main thing the main thing. All right. So
Are there just a question on that though? If you keep the main thing, does it limit your ability to see like the new idea that's a little off piece, but is a reflection of an opportunity that has developed since you established the main thing? So I guess I'm kind of wandering to try to say things can be fluid though, can't they, Damien?
things can be fluid, but if that new shiny object doesn't explicitly advance
The
the
main,
goal, then there's no budget for that. Right?
gotcha.
The appetite for innovation is tied to prosecuting the mission. And if I don't have 100,000 working class jobs in this portfolio by 2030, then I own it. We fell short.
Mm.
You discuss, unpack, figure out how and why you fell short. Where did things go wrong? And so you ask the question, give examples of mistakes. I could go on and on about the countless mistakes that I've made. When we started the company in 2020, I believe the fundraising environment would be much friendlier than it's turned out to be for the last 4 years. We've raised capital and made ends meet and innovated, but it required resiliency. It was not because it was a layup environment for fundraising. We had to, in certain cases, make lemonade out of lemons. And it's worked out great. I wouldn't change a thing, but that's a part of the journey. If you're not a fighter, and if you don't have the spirit of innovation, then it's not going to work. Further, the spirit of innovation in the absence of a clear goal, I think, is where a lot of organizations and their teams run off course. If you come to a company and you survey all the workers, if you're not hearing the same message again and again about what the priorities are for the business, then you have a failure of leadership, and there's clarity around the lack of clarity. That's a challenge that is unacceptable and has to be reconciled in every organization. And just because you have a clear goal does not mean that you have a team that's surfacing mistakes and being accountable for the good and the bad as life happens. People get married, people get divorced, babies are born, people die. Life happens. All these things touch the business, and you have to anticipate that you're going to grow together as a team, lock arms, reveal the good and the bad of it all, and stay on course for the goal. I've tried to focus the goal on something that is so laudable and worthy of people's time. They're okay working on it late into the evenings or on weekends because they wanted to. That they know their family and their family time is respected, and that the work will be there, and that they're trusted by their colleagues to get stuff done, not just to push paper, but to really get stuff done. So I'm passionate about this. Of course, I've learned so many lessons in my career. I turned 50 in the summer of 25, so it's coming up for me. Jimmy Carter lived 2 times that, right? He got stuff done. You have to agree with everything he did. There's no doubt he got stuff done. And I think for small business in particular, Wall Street and financial partners are not perceived as allies in getting stuff done. There's often an adversarial relationship with how you raise money. I want to try to break that down and show that you can not only be a source of capital, you can also bring resources to bear that will help reduce turnover and increase healthcare and retirement, because that's good for investors and for companies.
So, whether we're talking about working class people, and I really want everybody to take note of those numbers that Damien shared earlier. We're talking about 50 million people here in a important part of the economy, driving our experiences and our ability to to live the way that we live and to drive the economy going forward. In order to do that, you've got to invest in your people as a pillar. And that has always been a part of your leadership profile. That's why we founded Medley. Medley is about giving people and organizations an opportunity to learn and grow with each other. And it is a clear investment from companies that the people who are part of Medley really matter. And they then in turn show up differently in terms of their commitment. In the instance that you described with your colleagues at Lafayette Square, they'll work the long hours and make the commitment that's required because they know where they're headed, and they've really signed up for the mission. Now, all that sounds incredible, and it's not just a storyboard for you, Damien. It's how you manage Lafayette Square and all aspects of your life. But let's go back to where we started. You're a busy guy. You've got a family that you care deeply about. Your work really matters to you because you know it matters to working class people and to the shareholders who have trusted you with their dollars. It matters to the philanthropic organizations that you're involved in. But I got to tell you, don't you ever get tired? And how would you, advise those that are really earnestly trying to make a difference in all these things to get it all done? What's your secret?
I don't have any secrets. I've been privileged to be mentored by people like you. It is an honor and a privilege when people reach out to me asking for time and inspiration. I figure it out. I make the time. If I can't meet with you in person, then it's a call. And if it's not during business hours, then it's a weekend. But the number of legends, yourself included, who had 15 minutes for me, or let me walk you to the train, or can I stop by the house just to run something by you? And you got to pay it forward. You sort of have to pay it forward. We don't have time for ego or pretense when it's about investing in each other and creating conditions where people can be inspired and have a shot at taking risk. We need more risk takers in the society and our community. And that means you got to always make some resource available. And the people in my life, my loved ones, understand that, support that. It's not for everybody, but it's very much for me. And I benefited from people who had that commitment. We're in such a fortunate position with so much upside. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm talking about what this vintage of young leaders can accomplish. When you contemplate 2025 to 2050, this is an historic time. We got to give them as much soul food and as much context as we can to go out and execute the mission.
Well, that sounds incredibly optimistic, and I am energized to hear it. Recognize, though, that there are moments, particularly over the course of the last year, given some of the challenges in the world, that folks haven't been so optimistic. And so much of our conversations, I know, because you've had the same, are centered around, oh my goodness, where do we go from here?
Right.
What fuels your optimism? And mine, by the way. I am totally optimistic.
I think we have a franchise. I think we have a seat at the table, politically, economically. People can be disappointed by an election. People can be really excited and motivated by an election. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. You need votes to get stuff done in Congress. You need federal workers to get stuff done in the executive branch. You need employees to get stuff done in the private sector. We are connected. So rule number one, never cede autonomy or control of your franchise. And we have a seat at the table. I'll give you context in a provocative way. The discussion of diversity, equity, and inclusion can be read in multiple directions. One direction is to note the federal government itself invented DEI in the 50s in response to set-asides that were created for small business. And the success of small business set-asides created conditions for Richard Nixon in 61 to create the 8A program, which has been wildly successful and around for decades. It is purposefully designed to have disadvantaged persons provide goods and services to the federal government because the federal government needs those suppliers.
Needs the suppliers.
It's a necessity, right? So we have a franchise. Let's go do business. Let's be excellent. And climates shift. The franchise is the franchise, and we're accountable for how we perform today. I want to get Wednesday right. Then I want to focus on Thursday, and then focus on Friday. Like, we're going to take baby steps here with clarity and hope and positivity about the things we control and doing the right thing. And in my experience, if you make money and you're transparent, you are able to get access to a lot of places. People have time and attention for you. If you're not getting the job done, then you're working from a deficit position, and that's a different subject. But the first order of the day, and you said this to me as a young person in my 20s at Goldman Sachs, be excellent. It is non-negotiable that you be excellent. You have to be good at your job. If you have feedback, you want to complain about stuff, there'll be a time for that, especially if you were good at your job in the first place.
Damien, it is really an honor to have been on this journey with you. You are a person who will always work towards excellence, recognizing that there's always work to do on that front. Your humility, your commitment, and your creation with your team of Lafayette Square will no doubt make a difference for working class people, and in turn produce returns. Let's all go forth with the goal of getting business done, right. Being excellent, doing the work, and owning our individual franchises for the benefit of not just ourselves, but for our colleagues, our communities, and the things that matter. Let's get Wednesday right. I'm going to write that one down. Particularly at my age, I can't be thinking 25 years out, but I can think about today. Anyway, thank you so much, Damien.
Thank you, Edith.
And thank you all for joining us in this conversation. This is the first of the year. We're really excited for the ones that will follow, and they'll all have a similar theme: people who have and will continue to make a difference and impact in life, in work, and in society. So thank you very much. Take care.